Hi guys, today's lesson is Module 3, Lesson 9, Comparing Integers and Other Rational Numbers. Today's lesson will be really easy. I did write a story problem down for us to do like a brief summary of what we're going to be working on. So you might want to pause right here and write down everything you see, unfortunately, because I'm going to talk you through my thought process, and this will be probably one of the easier lessons you've done. So go ahead and put pause, take the time to write this down, and then we'll get through it. Okay, so today's lesson, they are giving you stories or word problems that students are writing, and they give you integers to look at. Then they want you to decide if you agree or disagree with the argument that the person is stating. So we're going to go through it, and I'm going to talk you through my thought process on it to help you understand where you get your agree or disagree answer from. So I zoomed in for you so you can see it better. All right. It says, Justine graphs the points associated with the following half numbers on a vertical number line. So we have negative 1 1/4, negative 1 1/2, and 1. She then writes a story following this scenario. So the nurse measured the heights of 3 6th grade students and compared their heights to the height of a typical, and I'm going to underline typical, 6th grader. 2 of the students' heights are below. Below is a keyword in what we've been working with rational numbers, the typical height. And 1 is above the typical height. So below and above are both keywords that we need to pay attention to when working through with rational numbers. Okay, continuing on. Given this information, Justine determined that the student represented by the point associated with negative 1 1/4 is the shortest of the 3 students. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and figure out, is Justine correct? So Justine says the shortest person is represented by negative 1 1/4. Okay, so we're going to write that first. Justine, she says shortest person is represented by negative 1 1/4. Okay, now we're going to do the work as if we were following the problem and using the numbers ourselves. So I'm going to scoot back up and pay attention to the 3 numbers we have. And I'm going to list them just as I see them. We have negative 1 1/4, negative 1 1/2, and then 1. Okay, so I listed the numbers given. Now, she is saying that negative 1 1/4 is the shortest. We're going to order these numbers from smallest to greatest, or least to greatest, to determine whether Justine is correct or not. So I know that negative numbers are always the smallest option. So I'm going to look at my 2 negative numbers first. I have negative 1 1/4 and negative 1 1/2. Now, covering up the negative sign, I think about it like this. I am pretending like the negative numbers are pizzas. 1 1/4 of a pizza, or 1 whole pizza and a half of a pizza. Which one is bigger piece? Well, negative 1 1/2 would be bigger. Okay, so since we have negative 1 1/2, that's technically smaller because we know on a negative number line, the further left you go, unfortunately, the bigger the number gets, but technically it's smaller. It's confusing with those negative numbers. So I know negative 1 1/2 is the smallest. Even though it looks like it's bigger, it's not. Okay, so I have that one done. I still have another negative number, and this one's closer to 0, so I know negative 1 1/4 is next. And finally, 1 would be the greatest. So looking at it, we said negative 1 1/2 is the smallest. Justine says the student represented by the point of negative 1/4 is the shortest. So do we agree or disagree? Well, she says it's negative 1 and 1/4. I know it's negative 1 and 1/2. Because negative 1 and 1/2 is further from 0 on the number line. So we're going to write it out now. I disagree. If 0 represented, in this case 0 would represent the middle point or the typical 6th grader height, then the point representing negative 1 and 1/2 is farther or further from 0 than negative 1 and 1/4, so it is the smaller student. That's it, guys. That's all this lesson is. You're just dissecting what someone is saying, their argument, solving it for yourself, and deciding, do you agree or disagree, and why. If you have questions, make notes on your notebook, and we will talk about it tomorrow morning in class, but I'm sure you guys got this. I hope you have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.